The hidden chamber of the palace. In the heart of Europe, hidden behind the grandiosity of royal walls, the whispered rumors of a secret chamber have never been fully confirmed nor denied. For centuries, the palace stood in splendor, its corridors adorned with riches, its gardens a testament to the power of a dynasty. But deep within its marble walls, concealed in the shadows, there was a place few dared to speak of, a place so well hidden that only a handful of those within the royal court knew it existed. The hidden chamber of the palace, its name alone sends chills down the spine of those who have heard its tale. The very mention of it is enough to silence even the most fearless. What dark secrets does it hold? What truths, buried beneath centuries of regal deception, could it unveil? And why has it remained concealed from the eyes of the public for so long? To this day, the legend endures. No one has ever truly discovered what lies inside the chamber, but the stories, oh the stories, are enough to send a shiver down anyone's spine. Tales of hidden treasure, forbidden love, and even betrayal so deep that it changed the course of history. Some say the chamber was a place of refuge, a sanctuary for the royal family in times of peril. Others whisper that it was a prison, a dark and secretive place where enemies of the crown were erased from existence, their names erased from history itself. Now, as the world moves forward, the whispers of the past grow louder, echoing through time. But the secrets of the hidden chamber remain as elusive as ever. So, let us take you on a journey into the heart of the palace, through the forgotten corridors, and into the very depths of its most mysterious room. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, History 1, to unravel these mysteries with us in future tales as we dive deeper into the forgotten secrets of Europe's past. The year was 1589, and the royal court of the kingdom was as vibrant as it had ever been. The reigning monarch, King Louis IX, had just celebrated his 40th year on the throne, and a grand ball was being held in honor of his long reign. The palace was filled with the sounds of laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, and the rustle of silk as the nobility danced beneath the gleaming chandeliers. But amidst the opulence, there was an unease that hung in the air. Whispers passed through the ranks of the court, unnoticed by the revelers, but not unheard by those who had been part of the palace for longer than they would care to admit. The servants, those who were invisible to the eyes of the nobility, knew something that the royals did not. A long-forgotten map had resurfaced, one that showed a hidden chamber deep within the palace, a chamber no one had ever heard of. The map had been in the possession of one of the king's most trusted advisors, a man by the name of Baron Henri de Valmont. Henri was an enigmatic figure, known for his intelligence and cunning, but also for his strange and private nature. Few had ever seen him without the shadow of secrecy following him wherever he went. It was said that Henri had a collection of ancient documents, some even believed to be older than the kingdom itself, and it was within these documents that the map had been discovered. Rumors spread like wildfire when the servants caught wind of this discovery. They knew that such a map could only mean one thing: a long-lost secret, perhaps of royal lineage, hidden away from prying eyes. But the nobility, of course, were too distracted by their lavish lifestyles to notice. They danced and feasted, ignorant of the fact that the kingdom was on the brink of unraveling a mystery that had been buried for centuries. It was during the early hours of the morning, as the ball began to die down, that Henri de Valmont made his way to the king's private chambers. The map was in his possession, hidden carefully beneath the folds of his cloak. He had no intention of revealing it to anyone, at least not yet, for Henri had his own plans, ones that would forever change the fate of the kingdom. As Henri entered the king's chambers, the door creaked shut behind him. King Louis IX was reclining on his throne, his face flushed from the wine, but his eyes remained sharp. He had grown suspicious of Henri, sensing that something was amiss. There was always something unsettling about the way Henri spoke, something that made Louis uneasy, but he could never quite place it. "I bring you something of great importance, Your Majesty," Henri said, his voice low and measured. He approached the king and revealed the map. King Louis's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly masked his surprise with a smile. "A map? What could be so important about a map, Henri?" Henri's gaze never wavered. "This, Your Majesty, is not just any map. It is the map of a secret chamber within the palace, one that has remained hidden for centuries. I believe it holds the key to understanding some of the most mysterious events in the kingdom's history." The king sat up straighter, his interest piqued. "A hidden chamber? And you are only bringing this to my attention now?" Henri bowed his head. "I have only just discovered it, sire, but I believe it could prove useful to you. The chamber may hold secrets that could change the course of the future." The king stared at the map, his mind racing with possibilities. Secrets of the past, what could they reveal? Could this hidden chamber hold the answers to questions that had plagued the royal family for generations? "I trust you, Henri," King Louis said after a long pause. "Find this chamber, but be careful. I do not wish to stir up trouble." Henri nodded, his lips curling into a smile. The game had begun. The very next morning, Henri de Valmont set his plan into motion. With the map still hidden beneath his cloak, he navigated the labyrinthine halls of the palace, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. He was not alone. Servants, guards, and nobles all passed through the grand hallways, unaware of the dark task Henri was about to undertake. He had been part of the court for many years, but today his purpose was different. Henri's first destination was the royal archives, a vast and dusty room filled with scrolls, documents, and books that chronicled the kingdom's history. To the common eye, the archives were nothing more than a room for record-keeping, but for those who knew where to look, it was a treasure trove of secrets. The true history of the kingdom, concealed within these ancient pages, was far from the official story that the crown told its people. And Henri knew this all too well. The doors to the archives creaked open, and Henri slipped inside. The room smelled of old parchment and candle wax. A few servants were dusting off bookshelves, but no one paid him any mind. He moved quickly, his eyes scanning the shelves for a particular set of documents. As he walked, he thought about the implications of what he was about to do. The map had shown a secret chamber, but there were no instructions, no guidance on how to find it. It was a mystery that only the most trusted of the royal court might have known about, and Henri was determined to be the one to unlock its secrets. He reached the far end of the room, where an old bookshelf sat against the wall. The bookcases here were more ancient, more forgotten. Henri had spent years studying the kingdom's history, and he knew that some of the most sensitive documents were hidden behind layers of bureaucracy, placed there by past monarchs who wished to erase certain chapters from the kingdom's history. He ran his fingers across the spine of an old tome, and as if by instinct, he pulled it out. A faint click echoed in the room as the hidden compartment behind the bookshelf revealed itself. Henri's heart raced as he stepped forward, careful not to make a sound. Inside, he found a series of journals, each one bound in worn leather. These were not for public consumption. These were the writings of past kings and queens, documents detailing the kingdom's most protected secrets. Henri thumbed through the pages, searching for something that would connect to the hidden chamber. And then he found it, a reference to a secret vault hidden within the palace walls, a place not even the royal family knew existed. The journal entry was brief, written in a cryptic script, but it mentioned an unseen door that would only open at the time of the kingdom's greatest need. The entry was dated 1492, but its contents suggested that it had been sealed away deliberately by the royal family, lost to time. Henri felt a chill run down his spine. The chamber was real. The entry confirmed it. But why had the royal family kept it hidden? What had they wanted to keep from the public? Henri couldn't help but feel that the answers to these questions would forever alter the course of the kingdom. As he replaced the journals and closed the hidden compartment, Henri realized that he wasn't just uncovering a mystery. He was about to rewrite history. The day passed slowly, and Henri could feel the weight of his discovery settling upon him. The more he thought about the hidden chamber, the more questions arose. What was inside? Why had it been sealed off? And why had his predecessor, King Louis's ancestors, been so determined to hide it from future generations? Henri knew that the time had come to begin his search in earnest. He could no longer wait for an opportune moment. The chamber, he believed, was somewhere within the palace, perhaps under their very feet. The hidden maps he had discovered in the archives were more than just a guide. They were a roadmap to a lost history that had been locked away for a reason. That night, Henri made his way to the underground vaults beneath the palace. The air grew colder as he descended, and the stone walls seemed to close in around him. The vaults were typically used to store treasures, royal jewels, and priceless artifacts. Few people were permitted to venture down into the depths, and even fewer understood the labyrinthine maze of passages that led to the most restricted chambers. Henri, however, had spent years studying every inch of the palace, every forgotten hallway, every secret staircase. He knew exactly where to go. He reached a long forgotten corridor, its floor covered in dust and cobwebs. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. But Henri felt a strange pull as he walked deeper into the gloom. The map in his hands seemed to guide him, pointing him toward a stone wall at the end of the passage. There, hidden in plain sight, was a door that should not have existed. Its edges were worn, and its hinges were rusted, but the markings on it matched those on the map Henri had found. He ran his fingers over the surface of the door, tracing the ancient symbols that had been etched into the stone. With a deep breath, he pushed against the heavy door. It groaned open, revealing the hidden chamber. The room inside was not like any other Henri had seen. There were no treasures, no gold or jewels. Instead, the chamber was filled with ancient artifacts, books, scrolls, and curious objects that seemed out of place. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a small, weathered chest. Henri approached it cautiously, his heart racing. What could it hold? The answers to all his questions? Or perhaps something far darker than he could ever imagine? As he opened the chest, Henri's breath caught in his throat. Inside was a single letter, sealed with a wax emblem that Henri immediately recognized. It was the royal seal of King Louis IX's ancestor, the very king who had hidden this chamber away centuries ago. But the letter inside, despite its age, was still legible. With trembling hands, Henri unsealed the letter, revealing its contents. The letter read, "To the one who dares uncover this secret, The truth within these walls is not meant for the world. It is a burden, a curse that has haunted our family for generations. The chamber holds the key to a power that was never meant to be unleashed. Guard it well, for once it is revealed, there is no turning back. Henri's blood ran cold. He had stumbled upon something far greater than a mere secret. It was a power, an ancient and dangerous force that had been buried beneath the palace for a reason. The royal family had locked it away for centuries, and now it was within Henri's reach. Henri stared at the letter, his hands trembling as he held it. The words burned into his mind. The truth within these walls is not meant for the world. A curse, a power that was never meant to be unleashed. The letter was clear. Whatever secret the chamber held, it was dangerous. Far too dangerous for anyone to discover. Yet Henri felt something stirring within him. He had always been a man driven by ambition, and now, standing in the heart of the palace's forgotten depths, he realized that he was on the cusp of uncovering a truth so profound it could reshape the kingdom. But at what cost? The chamber around him seemed to grow colder as he pondered the meaning of the letter. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows along the stone walls, and Henri's breath quickened. The air felt heavy, oppressive, as though something unseen was watching him, waiting for him to make a decision. With a shudder, he placed the letter back into the chest and closed it gently. But something in the room felt different now. The chamber seemed to hum with a strange energy, as if it was alive, reacting to his presence. He knew he couldn't stay there long. The risk of being caught, of the chamber being discovered, was too great. Henri had to return to the king. He had to tell him what he had found. But as he turned to leave, a glimmer of doubt gnawed at him. Was he truly ready to face whatever consequences awaited him? The chamber's contents seemed to pulse with a forbidden allure, tempting him to uncover more, to delve deeper into its secrets. Henri glanced back at the pedestal, then at the chest. His resolve faltered for a moment, but then he took a deep breath and stepped toward the door. The secrets of the chamber would have to wait. For now, he needed to return to the surface, to the world of the living. But little did Henri know, the curse of the hidden chamber was already beginning to unfold. Henri returned to the king's chambers that night, his mind racing with the events of the day. He had uncovered a secret that would change everything, but what could he tell the king? How much should he reveal? Henri's thoughts swirled in a frenzy as he walked through the grand corridors, making his way to the royal wing. King Louis IX was seated at his desk, as he often was in the late hours, his face illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight. The room was filled with the heavy silence of the night, the kind of quiet that seemed to press down on everything, making even the smallest sounds seem like a thunderous echo. Henri approached cautiously, knowing that the king's mood could shift in an instant. Louis was a man of sharp intellect, but he also had an air of authority that made others wary. Henri had never been one to fear the king, but tonight he felt a slight tremor of unease in his chest. "Sire," Henri said, bowing low before the throne, "I have returned from my search." King Louis looked up from his papers, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied Henri. "And? Have you found what you sought?" Henri hesitated. The map, the journals, the letter, it all weighed on him. Should he tell the king everything? Could he trust him with such knowledge? There was a moment of silence as Henri struggled to find the right words. "Sire," he began slowly, "I have found the hidden chamber." The king's eyes widened, but he said nothing. Henri continued, "Inside, I found more than I expected. There are objects, artifacts, things that have been locked away for centuries. But there is also a letter, written by one of your ancestors." King Louis straightened in his seat, his expression now serious. "A letter? And what did it say?" Henry stepped forward, his voice low and measured. "It warns of a curse, a power that was meant to remain buried forever. The letter states that whoever dares to uncover the secrets of the chamber risks unleashing something that cannot be undone." The king's gaze darkened. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "A curse, you say? This is not a matter to be taken lightly." Henri nodded. "I know, sire, but the chamber, it holds the key to something that could change the kingdom's future. What that future would be, however, is still unclear." King Louis was silent for a long time. The weight of the decision seemed to hang in the air like a thick fog. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft but firm. "We cannot simply ignore this, but we must tread carefully, Henri. If this power is as dangerous as you claim, we must ensure it never leaves the confines of the palace." Henri's heart skipped a beat. "What are you suggesting, Your Majesty?" "We must contain it. We cannot allow this power to spread to the outside world. The consequences would be disastrous." The king's eyes darkened as he looked directly at Henri. "You will return to the chamber. Do not open the chest again. Make sure that everything remains locked away, hidden from the rest of the court. We cannot risk anyone else finding it." Henri felt a knot form in his stomach. He had expected the king to be wary, but the weight of his words hit Henri harder than he anticipated. But the temptation, the pull of the chamber, was still there. It was as if something was calling to Henri, urging him to go back, to uncover more. "I will do as you command, Your Majesty," Henri said reluctantly, "but I fear we may be sealing our fate by doing so." Louis looked at him intently. "Perhaps, but some secrets are better left buried." Henri bowed once more and left the king's chambers, but as he descended the stairs back into the depths of the palace, a creeping sense of unease settled over him. The chamber, the curse, the letter, all of it lingered in his mind. Could he really stay away? Or would the temptation to uncover more prove too strong? Days passed since Henri's last visit to the hidden chamber. His thoughts remained consumed by the secrets it held, by the power lurking beneath the surface of the palace. He could feel the weight of his decision hanging over him, as though the chamber itself was watching, waiting. And perhaps it was, for Henri began to notice subtle signs around him, things that could not be easily explained away. As he walked the palace grounds, he would sometimes feel the hairs on the back of his neck rise, as though someone was observing him from the shadows. The servants, who had once been so eager to avoid his gaze, now seemed to watch him with a mix of fear and curiosity. No matter where he went, no matter how many halls he traversed, there was always a lingering feeling that someone or something was just behind him. At night, when Henri lay awake in his chambers, he could hear faint sounds, a soft tapping at the door, the rustle of robes, the faint echo of footsteps on the marble floors. But when he would rise to investigate, no one was there. Was it his imagination, or was something far darker at work? It wasn't long before Henri's unease turned to dread. He had learned too much, more than any man should ever know. And yet, he could not walk away. The secrets of the chamber had become his obsession, his burden. His mind raced with thoughts of what the power could mean, not just for the kingdom, but for himself. Could he wield it? Could he be the one to control it, to use it for his own benefit? But there was a part of him, deep down, that feared what might happen if the secrets of the chamber were ever fully unlocked. The king had ordered Henri to leave it alone, to seal it away. But Henri had never been one to follow orders blindly, especially when it came to matters of such importance. And now, the temptation to return to the chamber was almost too much to bear. One fateful evening, as Henri walked the halls of the palace, his footsteps heavy with indecision, he felt it, a sudden, icy draft that seemed to pull him toward the very place he had vowed to avoid. His pulse quickened. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, but the allure of the chamber was too strong. He found himself descending the familiar stairs, the ones that led into the vaults beneath the palace. The shadows seemed to grow longer, the air colder with each step. As he reached the stone door that concealed the hidden chamber, Henri hesitated, his hand hovering over the cold surface of the door. For a moment, he stood still, listening. The only sound was the faint echo of his own breathing. Then, the door creaked open, as if inviting him in. Henri entered the chamber once more, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was exactly as he had left it, the pedestal still in the center, the chest still resting on top. But something felt different. The air was thick with an almost palpable energy, as though the chamber itself had awakened. The chest. Henri's gaze was drawn to it, as though some invisible force was pulling him closer. The temptation was unbearable now. He could not resist. He moved toward the pedestal, his fingers trembling as he reached for the chest. As his hands closed around the cold metal handle, a strange sound filled the room. A low hum, like a distant whisper carried on the wind. The chest seemed to respond to his touch, as if recognizing his presence. Henri's breath caught in his throat. He slowly lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a small, ancient artifact. It was a key unlike any Henri had ever seen. It was intricately designed, covered in strange symbols, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Henri's fingers brushed against the key, and in that moment, he felt a surge of power, pure, unrestrained energy that seemed to flow through him, awakening something deep within. But before Henri could examine the key further, a voice cut through the silence, cold and commanding. "You shouldn't have done that." Henri froze, his heart stopping in his chest. The voice was familiar, yet it seemed to echo from the depths of the chamber itself. He turned quickly, but there was no one in sight. His mind raced. Who was speaking, and how could they know what he had done? The voice spoke again, this time softer, yet still laced with an undeniable authority. "The chamber's secrets are not for the living. You have awoken something that should have remained buried." Henri's eyes darted around the room, but still, there was no one there. The walls, the shadows, the very air seemed to close in on him. Panic surged within him, but he couldn't look away from the key. It was as if it had become the center of his world. "You must return it," the voice urged. "Leave this place and do not return. The power of the chamber has been awakened, and now it is too late." Henri's breath was shallow as he slowly backed away from the pedestal. His hand still clutched the key, the power within it too strong to release. The chamber seemed to pulse with energy, vibrating in response to his every movement. But then, something changed. The shadows in the room deepened, swirling together, converging in the center of the chamber. Henri felt a cold wind rush past him, and the air thickened with a strange heaviness, as though the very weight of history had settled upon him. The voice spoke one final time, its tone full of finality. "You are not meant to wield this power. Return the key, or face the consequences." Henri's fingers tightened around the key. He hesitated, His mind screamed at him to turn away, to listen to the warning, but his heart, his ambition, pulled him forward. The power in his hand was intoxicating, and he could already feel the possibilities unfolding before him. But as he moved to step forward, the shadows in the chamber coalesced into something far darker. A figure, cloaked in black, emerged from the depths of the room. Henri gasped, taking an instinctive step back. The figure's eyes burned with a malevolent light, and a chill spread through the air. "You have been warned," the figure said, its voice a cold whisper that echoed in Henri's very soul. "Now you will learn the price of your curiosity." The figure in the shadows moved toward Henri with unnatural grace, its steps silent and deliberate, as though it glided over the stone floor. Henri's heart hammered in his chest. His legs froze, rooted to the ground by a mixture of fear and fascination. The figure's face remained shrouded in darkness, but Henri could feel its presence, an overwhelming, suffocating energy that seemed to draw the very light from the room. "You have dared to unlock what should never have been touched." The voice of the figure echoed through the chamber, sending a cold shiver up Henri's spine. "Now, you will bear the consequences of your actions." Henri's mind raced. What was this being? What was the true nature of the power he had unleashed? He could feel the key pulsating in his hand, its energy almost alive, responding to the presence of the shadowy figure. His fingers tightened around it instinctively, as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. "Who are you?" Henri managed to force out, his voice hoarse. The figure's response came not in words, but in a deep, resonant growl, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the very walls of the palace. The shadows around the chamber began to shift, growing darker, more twisted. Henri felt the temperature in the room drop, his breath now visible in the chilled air. The power that had been unleashed seemed to take on a life of its own, and the chamber around him seemed to warp and distort in response. "I am the guardian," the figure finally spoke, its voice filled with an ancient, unfathomable sorrow. "The one tasked with protecting the secrets of the royal family. I am bound to the chamber, and so are you now. You have opened the door, Henri de Valmont. You cannot close it again." Henri swallowed, his throat dry. "What does that mean? What have I unleashed?" The figure's eyes, glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light, fixed on him. "You have awoken the power of the ancients, the force that was hidden for a reason. It is not meant to be wielded. It is a curse, a force that once belonged to the royal bloodline, and now it is bound to you." Henri's pulse quickened as the weight of the figure's words sank in. "Bound to me," he repeated, his voice trembling. The guardian nodded, the shadows around it swirling in response. "The chamber's power is yours to command, but it will never be free. It will consume you, just as it has consumed all those who came before you. You are no longer just a man, Henri. You are a part of the curse that has haunted this kingdom for centuries." Henri's mind spun. The words of the letter, the warnings of the king, the eerie sensation that had haunted him ever since he first entered the chamber, all of it was falling into place. The power was not just something that could be used, it was something that claimed its wielders, twisted them into something else entirely. A heavy silence filled the chamber. The figure continued to watch Henri, its glowing eyes never leaving his face. The shadows seemed to move closer, enclosing him, making it feel as if the very walls were closing in. Henri's breath became shallow, his vision narrowing as panic gripped him. I didn't mean to awaken this," Henri whispered, his voice breaking. I just wanted to understand, to gain knowledge. But I didn't know. I didn't know this would happen. The figure's gaze softened, though its expression remained unreadable. Few ever do, but it is too late for regrets now, Henri. The key is yours to hold, but it will come at a cost. The curse of the chamber is eternal. Once it is unleashed, it cannot be undone. Henri's hand, still clutching the key, began to feel numb. The pulse of energy that had once felt so intoxicating now felt like a weight, an anchor pulling him down into the depths of despair. His thoughts began to unravel, and he could feel the shadows wrapping around him, seeping into his very soul. He stumbled backward, his legs giving way beneath him. The figure moved closer, its presence now overwhelming, suffocating. Henri could feel the power of the chamber, that strange, malevolent force, growing stronger with each passing second. "You are mine now," the figure said, its voice colder than ever, "and the kingdom shall be mine again too, for no one escapes the curse of the hidden chamber." Henri's mind raced. He had to get out. He had to escape before it was too late. But the chamber seemed to twist around him, the walls closing in as the shadows pressed against him from all sides. He felt a cold, clammy hand brush against his skin, and for a moment he thought he might pass out from the sheer terror of it all. With one final, desperate effort, Henri forced himself to his feet. His heart pounded in his chest as he made a frantic dash for the door, but the chamber seemed to shift around him, the path to escape becoming ever more elusive. The shadows reached out to him, like tendrils of darkness, pulling him back into the depths of the palace. Henri's vision blurred as the world around him seemed to disappear, swallowed by the growing darkness. But just as he was about to succumb to the shadows, a voice broke through, cutting through the fear and confusion. "Henri!" The voice was familiar, the voice of King Louis IX. Henri's eyes snapped open. The chamber was gone. The shadows faded. He was no longer in the hidden chamber, but back in the royal corridors, his body trembling with fear and exhaustion. His heart was still racing, his thoughts chaotic. King Louis stood before him, his eyes filled with concern. "What happened? You've been gone for hours. What did you find?" Henri could barely speak, his breath coming in ragged gasps. It's real, sire. The curse, the power of the chamber. It's not just a legend. It's all true." The king's face paled as he listened to Henri's words. "You must never return to that place, Henri. The chamber is cursed. You were right to warn me." Henri shook his head, still disoriented. "It's too late, Your Majesty. The curse. It's bound to me now. There's no way out." King Louis looked at him with a mixture of pity and fear. "Then we must find a way to contain it. We cannot let it spread. Not again." Henri nodded weakly, his mind still trapped within the nightmare he had experienced. But deep down, he knew the truth. There was no containment. The curse had been unleashed, and it was already too late to stop it. The days following Henri's encounter in the hidden chamber were shrouded in an eerie silence. The kingdom had not yet felt the full weight of the curse, but Henri knew, deep in his bones, that it was coming. The power of the chamber had been awakened, and there was no turning back. Henri tried to keep his mind occupied, to ignore the growing sense of dread that gnawed at him. But it was impossible. The whispers of the shadows seemed to follow him wherever he went, flickering at the edges of his vision, curling around his thoughts like tendrils of darkness. And no matter how hard he tried, he could not shake the feeling that something was stirring deep within the palace walls, something ancient and powerful. King Louis had ordered Henri to remain in his chambers, to avoid the palace vaults and the hidden chamber at all costs. But Henri could not stay away. He could feel the pull of the chamber, like a magnetic force drawing him back into its depths. The need to uncover more, to understand the curse that had now become part of him, was overwhelming. One night, as Henri sat alone in his room, his fingers once again tracing the edges of the mysterious key, he heard it, the soft whisper that had become a constant presence in his mind. Henri. The voice, cold and distant, seemed to echo in his very soul. It was the same voice he had heard in the chamber, the guardian, the figure that had warned him. You cannot escape. Henri's heart skipped a beat as the whisper reverberated through the silence. He rose from his chair, his hands trembling, and moved toward the door of his chamber. He couldn't stay here. He couldn't ignore the call any longer. The shadows had been speaking to him ever since he first touched the key. And now, they were demanding his attention. As Henri made his way through the winding corridors of the palace, he felt the darkness closing in around him. The once gleaming marble floors seemed dull and lifeless, and the grand tapestries that lined the walls appeared to shift in the flickering candlelight, as if they were hiding something just beyond his reach. His steps echoed in the quiet hallways, and each footfall seemed to draw him closer to the inevitable. He reached the vaults once more, the entrance to the hidden chamber. The door was ajar, as if inviting him in. Henri hesitated. The last time he had entered, the chamber had nearly consumed him. But now, something was different. The shadows were alive, swirling around him, tugging at his soul. They were calling to him, urging him to step inside. With a deep breath, Henri pushed open the door and stepped into the chamber once again. The room was dark, the air thick with an oppressive energy. The walls seemed to pulse with life, as if the very stones of the palace were alive, reacting to his presence. The pedestal stood in the center, the chest still resting on top. But now, Henri noticed something new, something that had not been there before. A figure stood by the chest, cloaked in shadows. The figure was tall, its form indistinct, as if it were made of the very darkness that filled the room. Henri's heart raced as the figure turned to face him, its glowing eyes fixing on him with an intense, unblinking stare. "You've returned," the voice of the figure said, its tone filled with a mixture of sorrow and inevitability. "I knew you would." Henri's mouth went dry. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The figure stepped forward, its presence cold and suffocating. "You cannot escape this, Henri. The power of the chamber has already claimed you. You are bound to it, just as I was bound to it before you." Henri took a step back, his mind reeling. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" The figure raised its hand, and the shadows around the room seemed to shift, coiling around it like a cloak. "I was once the keeper of the chamber, the guardian who protected its secrets. But when the power of the chamber was unleashed, I too was consumed by it. I am now but a shadow of what I once was, bound to the very force I swore to protect." Henri's breath caught in his chest. You were a man?" The figure nodded slowly. "Yes, once, but no longer. The curse of the chamber is not merely a power, it is a transformation. It twists those who dare to wield it, changing them into something less than human. And now, Henri, you will become like me, a servant to the shadows." Henri's hands shook, the key still clutched tightly in his grip. The reality of what he had unleashed was sinking in. The curse was real. The power was not just a force to be controlled. It was a living, breathing entity that sought to consume all who dared to uncover its secrets. "No," Henri whispered, taking another step back. "I won't become like you. I'll find a way to stop this." The figure's eyes burned with a cold, mocking light. "There is no stopping it, Henri. The power is already inside you. You can no more escape it than you can escape your own shadow." Henri felt a surge of panic. The shadows in the room seemed to stretch toward him, reaching out like tendrils, seeking to wrap around him, to claim him. He could feel the darkness pressing in on him from all sides, suffocating him. But then, something inside him snapped. He could feel the power of the key pulsing in his hand, calling to him, urging him to embrace it. The whispers of the chamber grew louder, filling his mind, drowning out his thoughts. The temptation was unbearable. And yet, in that moment, Henri realized something. The curse had already claimed him. There was no turning back, but he would not surrender without a fight. With a final desperate cry, Henri raised the key high above his head, holding it out toward the figure. The shadows recoiled, as if the key itself had the power to push them back. Henri felt a surge of energy, raw, untamed power flowing through him more than he had ever felt before. "You cannot control me," Henri shouted, his voice shaking with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I will not be your puppet." The figure seemed to falter, its form wavering in the shifting shadows. "You think you can control it? You think you can defy the power of the chamber?" Henri's heart raced, his thoughts a blur. He had no idea what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. The battle for his soul had only just begun. Henri stood there, trembling but resolute, his grip tightening around the ancient key. The figure before him seemed to grow more insubstantial, its form flickering like a shadow caught in a gust of wind. But the power inside him surged, unstoppable and raw. The room around him pulsed with energy, as if the very walls were watching, waiting for the outcome of this strange and dark confrontation. "You cannot resist it forever, Henri," the figure intoned, its voice a hollow echo. "You are bound to the curse. The shadows will take you, just as they have taken me. You cannot escape." But Henri felt something else, something that was more than fear. It was defiance, the spark of a will that refused to bend. His mind raced, memories of the royal family's long-forgotten history flashing before his eyes. He knew what this curse had done to those before him. Kings, queens, and servants alike. All had been drawn into its web, consumed by the power that resided in the hidden chamber. But Henri was not like them. He had seen too much, experienced too much, and now he knew the one thing that had eluded him all along. The key was not just a tool. It was the center of everything, the force that held the chamber's power in check. Henri had to control it, to master it, or else he would become another soul lost to the darkness. "You will not control me," Henri muttered through clenched teeth, staring down at the figure that was now less tangible than ever. "I won't let you take me." The shadows around him began to move faster, swirling around him like a storm, and Henri felt the very air press in on him, suffocating him. The figure's laugh echoed in the chamber, deep and unsettling. "You are already lost," the figure said, its voice filled with twisted amusement. "The moment you touched the key, you sealed your fate. The power is not yours to command. It has chosen you, Henri, and soon you will learn to embrace it." Henri felt the weight of the chamber's curse bearing down on him, but the key, the strange ancient key, thrummed in his hand as though it were alive. He felt the key's energy, its ancient power, stir within him, pushing against the darkness, refusing to yield. Without thinking, Henri slammed the key into the stone pedestal, the keyhole aligning perfectly with the ancient markings on the pedestal's surface. A tremor ran through the chamber, and the shadows recoiled as if burned by the key's presence. The room was silent for a moment, the only sound the rapid beat of Henri's heart. The key seemed to resonate with the chamber's energy, as though it were unlocking something long buried deep within the palace. Henri's mind spun as the chamber seemed to open, revealing yet another secret. The figure before him let out a low growl, its form flickering and shifting in the dark. "No, you fool, you cannot control it." But Henri's focus was absolute. With a cry of determination, he twisted the key in place. The air in the chamber shifted suddenly, cold yet electric, before a sudden flash of brilliant light filled the room, blinding him momentarily. When Henri's vision cleared, the figure was gone. The chamber had changed. The shadows that had once filled the room seemed to recede, their oppressive presence fading. The walls no longer pulsed with the same suffocating energy. Henri's chest rose and fell with labored breaths, but as he looked around, he realized the chamber no longer felt like a prison. The oppressive weight that had been there for so long had lifted, replaced with a strange peace. And yet, Henri could feel something else, a presence, watching him, but no longer with the same malevolent force. The curse, though still lingering, had been subdued. For now. Henri looked down at the key in his hand. The power had not vanished, but it had shifted. It was no longer an uncontrollable force. Now, it seemed like a tool, something he could wield, but only if he understood it. He had not conquered the curse, but he had bought himself time to learn its secrets. Is it truly over? Henri whispered to himself, unsure whether he was asking the chamber or the cursed power that had claimed him. The room was silent. The shadows had withdrawn completely, leaving only the stillness of the chamber in their wake. For the first time, Henri felt the weight of the chamber lift, as though the dark secrets within had been sealed once more, at least for the moment. Henri let out a long, shaky breath, his fingers still wrapped tightly around the key. He had succeeded, but at what cost? What would the future hold? The king had warned him, but now Henri understood the true nature of the curse. There was no escaping it. It had become part of him, just as it had consumed those before him. But Henri had learned something else. He wasn't the first to uncover the secret of the hidden chamber, and he would not be the last. There would always be those who sought power, who would risk everything to possess what lay within. And Henri had become the keeper, whether he wanted to or not. As he turned to leave the chamber, Henri's thoughts lingered on the guardian's warning. The shadows will always return. The curse, it seemed, could never be truly eradicated. It was an ancient force, one that would always find a way back. And Henri knew, in the deepest corners of his soul, that the battle was far from over. The hidden chamber had not revealed its final secret, and the shadows, though dormant for now, would rise again. Henri emerged from the hidden chamber, the weight of the key still heavy in his hand, its presence both comforting and ominous. The chamber door closed with a soft click behind him, but the echoes of its darkness lingered in his mind, their whispers more insistent than ever. His steps were slow, as if the very air around him was thick with the gravity of what he had just faced. The peace he had felt moments ago was fleeting, like the last breath of wind before a storm. As he walked through the grand corridors of the palace, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, something far older and more powerful than he could comprehend. The flickering torchlights along the walls cast long shadows, stretching unnaturally as if they were reaching for him. He quickened his pace, hoping the growing unease would dissipate, but it clung to him like a second skin. Henri's mind kept returning to the figure in the chamber. Had it truly vanished? Or had he simply driven it back into the depths for now? The figure had seemed like more than just a guardian. It had been a warning, a living testament to the curse's power. What would happen when it returned? What if, despite his actions, the curse had already begun to take root within him? The thought made Henri shudder. He had thought he could control the power, but now doubt crept in. The key he held wasn't just a tool. It was a vessel of ancient energy, a link to something far darker than he had ever imagined. The guardians were not just protectors, they were its victims, and Henri had become its next host. As he made his way back to his chambers, he spotted King Louis waiting for him in the hallway. The king's face was pale, his brow furrowed in concern. "Henri," the king said, his voice sharp with worry. "Where have you been? We have been searching for you. There are whispers among the servants, strange occurrences, signs that something is wrong within the palace." Henri paused, his hand instinctively clutching the key. I went to the chamber," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could control it, but You touched it," the king interrupted, his voice laced with dread. "I warned you, Henri. You have unleashed something far worse than you realize. The curse is not meant to be contained. It will consume everything." Henri met the king's gaze, his eyes filled with both regret and defiance. "I know what I have done, but I had no choice. The power, it called to me. I had to understand it." Louis stepped forward, his hands clenched in frustration. "You fool! This kingdom has lived in the shadow of this curse for centuries. We have kept it hidden for a reason. If the palace, if the people, find out what you've done, it will be too late." Henri looked down at the key in his hand, the weight of it pulling him deeper into his thoughts. "What am I supposed to do now, sire? What if the curse has already begun to consume me?" Louis placed a hand on Henri's shoulder, his expression hardening. "We cannot undo what has been done, but we can still fight it. We must gather the knowledge of the past, find a way to control the power before it grows beyond our reach." Henri looked at the king, his heart heavy with uncertainty. "I've already felt its power. It's too strong. I don't think we can control it. Not like this." Louis's face softened, but only slightly. "Then we must find a way to contain it. There must be a way to lock it away once more, to return it to the darkness where it belongs. We will gather those who have studied the old ways, the scholars, the mystics, and find a solution." Henri nodded, though doubt clouded his thoughts. Could they truly find a way to stop the curse? Or had it already taken root in the very core of the kingdom? Over the following days, Henri and King Louis gathered their most trusted advisors, seeking counsel from the kingdom's most knowledgeable historians, occultists, and scholars. They combed through ancient texts, old manuscripts, and hidden tomes, hoping to find any clue that might lead them to a way to contain the curse. But every lead they pursued seemed to vanish, leading only to more questions and more dead ends. One evening, as Henri sat alone in the royal library, poring over yet another faded manuscript, a servant entered with a sealed scroll. It was a letter from an old and reclusive scholar, a man who had long been rumored to know the deepest secrets of the royal lineage. His name was Dr. Emile Darwin, and he had once been a court historian before disappearing from the palace years ago. Henri broke the seal and unrolled the scroll. The handwriting was familiar, sharp, precise, and filled with an almost unnatural urgency. Henri de Valmont, the letter began. I have heard of your actions. You have opened the chamber. The power that sleeps within is not to be taken lightly. If you are reading this, you have already awakened it. But I can help you. I know the secret to binding the power, to returning it to its slumber. However, you must come alone. Do not bring the king, for he will not understand. The answers lie within the ruins of the old chapel in the forest beyond the palace gates. Time is running out. The shadows will grow stronger the longer you wait. Come quickly. Only then can you hope to survive. Henri's hands trembled as he read the final lines. The scholar, Dr. Darwin, was the key. He had knowledge of the curse that even the king did not possess. But Henri knew the warning in the letter was clear. The power of the chamber was not something that could be controlled by anyone but the one who understood its true nature. Henri felt a surge of both hope and dread. The time had come to leave the palace behind, to venture into the unknown in search of the answers that might save or damn him. The next morning, he set out alone, determined to find Dr. Darwin and the answers that lay hidden in the ruins of the old chapel. The shadows of the palace seemed to follow him as he left, the weight of the curse heavy on his shoulders. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger. But Henri knew one thing for certain. He had no choice but to continue. For the kingdom's future and his own depended on the secrets he was about to uncover. Henri's journey took him beyond the safety of the palace walls, into the dense forest that lay to the north, a place of ancient trees and forgotten paths. The air grew thick with mist as he ventured deeper, the once quiet landscape now alive with the sound of unseen creatures moving in the shadows. It was a place of mystery, long feared by the locals, who spoke in hushed tones about the strange occurrences that took place within its depths. The forest was said to be haunted by spirits, but Henri wasn't afraid of ghost stories. He had already faced something far darker than any wraith or phantom. He had opened the hidden chamber, and now he was hunting down the one man who might be able to stop the curse that had claimed him. His heart pounded as the path grew narrower, the trees pressing in on all sides. He could feel the weight of the key in his pocket, a constant reminder of the danger he carried with him. Every step he took seemed to bring him closer to the unknown, closer to the ancient ruin Dr. Darwin had mentioned in his letter. The old chapel, according to the scholar, was hidden deep within the forest, a relic of a time long forgotten. It had once been a place of worship for the royal family, but centuries of disuse had turned it into little more than a crumbling monument to the past. What could Dr. Darwin have known about the chamber's curse that no one else had? Henri's mind raced with questions, but for now, he focused on the path ahead. After hours of walking, the forest began to open up, and Henri found himself standing before a clearing. In the center, half hidden by the overgrown foliage, stood the old chapel. The structure was weathered and decaying, its stone walls crumbling with age. The roof had caved in long ago, and ivy and moss clung to the ruins like a thick veil. It seemed almost alive, as though the chapel itself were watching him. Henri felt a chill run down his spine. The letter had been clear. He was to come alone. But now, standing before the chapel, he could not shake the feeling that he was not entirely alone. There was something here, something watching from the shadows, waiting for him to make the next move. As he stepped closer, he noticed something strange. The air around the chapel seemed to shimmer, a faint distortion that caused his senses to tingle. Henri paused, his hand instinctively moving toward the key. It felt as though the chapel itself was reacting to his presence, like an ancient sentinel awakening after centuries of silence. He crossed the threshold of the ruin, stepping into the chapel's main hall. The space was vast and eerily silent, save for the soft rustling of leaves outside. The light from the waning sun filtered through the broken windows, casting long shadows across the stone floor. In the center of the chapel, a stone altar stood, ancient and untouched by time. At the far end of the room, hidden in the shadows, Henri could make out the silhouette of a figure, a man draped in a dark cloak, standing motionless. His heart quickened. Was this Dr. Darwin, or had someone else been waiting for him all along? Henri de Valmont, the figure spoke, his voice low and gravelly. You have come. Henri stepped forward, his voice trembling. Dr. Darwin? The figure nodded, though his face remained hidden beneath the hood of his cloak. Yes, it is I, and I see you have brought the key. Henri's hand instinctively gripped the key in his pocket, its presence heavy against his chest. I've come to learn how to stop this. The curse. It's inside me, and it's growing stronger. The figure turned, and Henri followed him deeper into the chapel, toward a large ancient tome resting on the altar. The pages were yellowed and brittle with age, the binding cracked and worn. As Dr. Darwin opened the book, the air in the room seemed to shift, charged with a strange energy. The key you hold, Dr. Darwin said, his fingers tracing the pages of the book, is not just an artifact. It is the key to a power older than the royal bloodline itself, a power that was sealed away long ago for fear of what it could do. The curse that haunts the royal family was not born of mortal hands. It was a gift, or rather, a curse, given to your ancestors by forces beyond this world. Henri's mind raced. A curse? But why? Why would anyone want to give such a gift? Because the power it holds is unlike anything else, Dr. Darwin continued, his voice barely above a whisper. The royal bloodline was chosen to wield it, but not as masters. The curse was placed upon them to ensure that the power would never fall into the wrong hands. It is a force of creation and destruction, bound by ancient magic. But when the chamber was opened, when the key was used, the curse was set free once more. And now, it seeks to claim you, Henri. It will not stop until it has consumed you completely. Henri felt a cold sweat form on his brow as the weight of Dr. Darwin's words sank in. What do I do? How do I stop it? Dr. Darwin looked at him with dark, sorrowful eyes. You cannot stop it, Henri. Not completely. The curse is part of you now, but there is a way to contain it, to keep it from consuming you entirely. The key must be returned to its rightful place, the place where it was first forged, deep beneath the earth, where the magic that created it can be sealed away once more. Only then will the curse be dormant. Henri felt the crushing weight of the decision before him. To return the key to its origin would mean losing the power forever. But it was the only way to save himself and the kingdom from the darkness that had already begun to spread. Dr. Darwin stepped away from the altar, his eyes never leaving Henri. But you must be warned. The journey to the place of its origin is fraught with dangers. The very earth itself will fight against you, and there are those who will seek to stop you from succeeding. You are not the only one who knows the power of the key. Henri's grip tightened around the key. Who else knows about this? Dr. Darwin's gaze darkened. You are not the first to seek the key's power. The shadows have long watched over it, waiting for the day when someone would awaken the curse once more. And now, they know you. You will be hunted, Henri. But you must go. The fate of the kingdom rests in your hands." Henri's heart pounded as he realized the true scope of his mission. He had awakened a force that no one could control, and now he was the only one who could stop it from spreading further. But to do so, he would have to risk everything. Henry stood in the shadow of the crumbling old chapel, the weight of Dr. Darwin's words pressing down on him like a physical force. The forest around him was silent, save for the rustling of leaves, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The curse, the key, the dark magic, all of it was now his responsibility. Henri felt as though he were standing on the edge of an abyss, looking into a future he could not fully comprehend. But he knew one thing for certain: he could not turn back. Dr. Darwin's warning echoed in his mind. The journey to the place of its origin is fraught with dangers. You will be hunted. Henri felt the stirrings of doubt, but his resolve hardened. The darkness had already claimed part of him. There was no more room for hesitation. The only way to ensure the kingdom's survival, and his own, was to follow through. He had to return the key to where it had been forged, deep beneath the earth, in the forgotten heart of the realm. Dr. Darwin had told him that the journey would not be easy, and Henri now understood the gravity of those words. He had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The scholar reached into his cloak and pulled out an ancient map, tattered and yellowed with age. "This will guide you to the place," he said, handing it to Henri. "But be warned, the path is long and treacherous. You will face forces that have been waiting for centuries, those who would stop you. You must move quickly and with caution." Henri took the map with trembling hands, his fingers brushing the weathered parchment. It was a map of the kingdom, but there were markings on it Henri had never seen before. Strange symbols and hidden paths that led far beyond the palace, deep into the wilderness. The location of the ancient forge where the key had been created was marked in the farthest corner of the map, a place that had been lost to time. Henri turned to Dr. Darwin, his voice tight with fear. "How will I know when I'm close? What will I face on this journey?" Dr. Darwin's eyes darkened as he spoke. "The path you seek is not just a physical one, Henri. You will be tested, both by the earth itself and by those who dwell in the shadows. The guardians of the curse will seek to stop you, and the land itself will twist and turn against you. The deeper you go, the stronger the curse will become. It will try to consume your will, turn you into one of its servants. But you must stay focused. You must resist." Henri felt a cold shiver run down his spine, but he nodded grimly. "I understand." "One more thing," Dr. Darwin added, his voice low. "If you are caught, if you fail, you will not only lose your life, the curse will grow, and it will spread like a plague, consuming everything in its path. If that happens, it will be the end of the kingdom, and the end of all who live in it." Henri nodded again, his thoughts turning back to the royal palace, the people he had sworn to protect. He could not fail them. He could not let the curse destroy the kingdom. He had already felt its power, the pull, the temptation, and he would not let it win. "Thank you, Dr. Darwin," Henri said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "I will not fail." The scholar's gaze softened, but there was a sadness in his eyes. "I hope you find what you seek, Henri. But remember, even if you succeed, you may never truly escape what you've awakened." With those words lingering in the air, Henri turned and began his journey, the map clenched tightly in his hand. He had no idea how long it would take, or what he would encounter along the way, but the path ahead was clear. He had to return the key to its origin and seal away the curse, no matter the cost. The forest grew darker as Henri ventured deeper, the trees closing in around him. The air became thicker, heavier with the weight of the unseen forces watching him. He felt a shift in the atmosphere as the shadows of the forest seemed to stretch longer, more ominous. The path was barely visible, the ground uneven and treacherous. Henri's heart beat faster with every step. But then, as he reached a clearing, the ground beneath him shifted, and he saw it, a doorway, hidden in the earth, as though the forest itself had opened up before him. The doorway was made of stone, ancient, and covered with intricate carvings, symbols Henri recognized from the map. This was it, the place where the key had been forged. Henri took a deep breath and stepped forward, pushing aside the vines and moss that obscured the entrance. The moment his foot touched the stone doorway, a low rumble echoed through the earth. The ground trembled, and Henri instinctively backed away, fear rising within him. But then, with a creak and a groan, the doorway began to open. Inside was a dark passageway, lit only by the dim, flickering glow of Henri's lantern. The air was cold, and the stone walls seemed to close in around him as he descended into the depths. The passage was narrow and winding, but Henri pressed on, his heart pounding in his chest. The path was long, and every turn seemed to lead deeper into the heart of the earth. He felt as though the very ground was alive, watching him, sensing his presence. Hours passed, and Henri began to feel the weight of the darkness press down on him. The air grew heavier with each step, and the silence in the tunnels was suffocating. He had no idea how far he had traveled or how much longer it would take. His mind began to wander, doubts creeping in, wondering if he was walking into a trap, if the curse had already begun to claim him. But just when Henri thought he could go no further, the tunnel opened up into a vast chamber, its walls lined with ancient carvings and symbols. At the center of the room, standing tall and silent, was an altar, a stone platform, weathered by time, with a single indentation at its center. Henri knew, without a doubt, that this was where the key had been forged. He stepped forward, his heart racing as he placed the key into the indentation. The ground trembled again, but this time, it was not with fear. It was with power, an ancient, overwhelming force that seemed to pulse through the very stone beneath his feet. Henri could feel the energy in the room. The curse that had been sealed here long ago was awakening. And with it, Henri realized, the final test had begun. The moment Henri placed the key into the indentation, the room seemed to hold its breath. The stone beneath his feet vibrated as if responding to the key's touch, and for a brief moment, Henri wondered if he had made a grave mistake. But there was no turning back now. The air thickened, swirling around him like a tempest. The carvings on the walls seemed to come alive, glowing faintly with an eerie greenish light. The very earth beneath Henri's feet groaned, and he could feel the ancient magic stirring, rising from the depths of the earth like a sleeping giant awakening from a long slumber. Henri stepped back, his eyes fixed on the altar. It was as though the key had unlocked something deep within the stone, something that had been dormant for centuries. The chamber seemed to pulse with energy, and Henri's heart raced with a mixture of awe and dread. Then suddenly, a deep rumble shook the ground beneath him. The altar before him cracked open, revealing a hidden cavity within the stone. Henri's breath caught in his throat as he watched the stone split apart, the darkness inside the altar now fully revealed. From within the chamber's depths emerged a swirling mass of shadow and light, a form that was neither fully human nor fully beast. It was an ancient being, older than the earth itself, its presence so powerful that Henri could feel it in every fiber of his being. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, burned with a malevolent fire, glowing with an intensity that made Henri's blood run cold. "You dare awaken me?" The voice was not one voice, but many, a chorus of whispers, each one more insistent than the last. "You who have disturbed the slumber of ages, you who have taken what was never meant to be touched." Henri stood frozen, his hand instinctively reaching for the key, the weight of it heavy in his pocket. His heart pounded in his chest, but there was no escape now. The curse had been unleashed, and the entity before him was the manifestation of that power. "I have come to stop it," Henri said, his voice shaky but resolute. "I have come to end the curse." The shadowy figure laughed, a sound like 1,000 whispers, each one laced with malice. "You think you can stop me? You think you can undo what has been set in motion? You are but a mortal man, Henri de Valmont, and you are already mine." Henri's fingers clenched around the key, his mind racing. The figure's presence was suffocating, its power so overwhelming that Henri could barely breathe. It was as if the very air was being drawn into the darkness, leaving him powerless and weak. "You do not understand," the figure continued, its voice reverberating through the chamber. "The key is not your salvation, it is your doom. You have been chosen to carry its curse, to bear its weight. And now, you will learn the true cost of awakening what was meant to remain hidden." Henri could feel the curse creeping into him, its tendrils wrapping around his soul, seeking to consume him. The whispers in his mind grew louder, urging him to surrender, to embrace the darkness that had claimed so many before him. But Henri refused. He couldn't let it take him, not now. With a desperate cry, Henri raised the key high above his head, the light of its ancient power flaring brightly as if it were fighting against the darkness. The entity recoiled, its form shifting and warping as the key's power surged through the chamber, pushing back the shadows. "This is not over," the entity hissed, its voice filled with rage. "You may resist now, but the curse will find you. It always does." Henri's heart pounded as he pressed the key against the stone altar, his fingers trembling. The power within the key pulsed with a force he could barely comprehend, but it was the only thing that could stop the entity. He focused every ounce of his will on the key, pushing against the curse, fighting the shadows that sought to claim him. For a moment, it felt as though the earth itself was holding its breath. The shadows swirled around Henri, trying to claw at him, to drag him back into the darkness. But he held firm, focusing all his strength on the key, on the power it contained. With a final, desperate cry, Henri pressed the key deeper into the altar's cavity. There was a deafening roar, a tremor that shook the entire chamber, and then silence. Henri staggered back, gasping for breath. The shadows had vanished. The chamber was still, the air heavy but no longer suffocating. The entity was gone. The power of the curse had been sealed away for now. But as Henri looked around the chamber, he realized that the victory had come at a cost. The ground beneath him was cracked, the altar shattered, and the key had vanished. Henri fell to his knees, exhaustion and relief washing over him. He had done it. He had stopped the curse. But at what price? The key was gone, and he was left with nothing but the remnants of the battle. The chamber was silent now, but Henri knew the truth. The curse would always be there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next person to awaken it. But for now, he had won. and the kingdom would live to see another day. Henri had no idea how much time had passed when he finally found the strength to rise. The chamber was still, the oppressive darkness now lifted, but the lingering sense of dread weighed heavily on his heart. The key, the source of the curse, was gone, and he had no idea where it had gone or what consequences would come from its disappearance. As Henri made his way back through the winding tunnels, he could feel the earth beneath him shifting, as though the very foundations of the world were settling. The path that had once seemed so clear was now fraught with uncertainty. But Henri didn't turn back. There was no turning back now. When he finally emerged from the depths of the earth, he found himself standing in the forest once more, the familiar trees surrounding him. The air was cool, but the forest felt different now. The curse had been sealed away, but the land itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Henri knew that his journey wasn't over. The key might be gone, but the shadows that had followed him were never truly gone. And one day, someone else would come. Someone else would awaken the curse. But for now, Henri had won. The kingdom had been saved, and the curse that had haunted the royal family for centuries had been sealed away for the time being. As he made his way back to the palace, Henri's mind was filled with one thought. Victory comes at a price, and though the kingdom was safe for now, the darkness would always be there, lurking in the corners of the world, waiting for the next soul to be tempted. The battle was over, but the war had just begun.